Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Marianne Pinkston, and this is The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. I am here with another great guest, and I have talked a lot in the past about CIRS, or Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome, and biotoxin illness. And the reason I focus on this so much is because I feel like this is something my daughter and I have suffered from. And even as a physician, it is a topic that is very difficult for people to understand. It's very difficult for other physicians to understand. So today I'm bringing somebody in who is an absolute world-renowned specialist in this, and I'm excited to have you on, Dr. Dorninger. And I knew that I was going to slaughter your name. It's a beautiful name, and so thank you. I appreciate you being on this morning with me and recording. I know you've got a lot of great expertise in this area. Why is it so difficult for people to understand? And welcome in, by the way.
Thank you. And, I'm the son of an Austrian immigrant, so it's Dr. Dorninger, but that's why most people call me Eric or Dr. D. Just don't call me late for dinner. Blood sugar's usually low by then, so it's time to reboot. But I got into CIRS, Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome, because of my own personal experience. And that's what I love the name of your podcast is The Better Life, because I am living a better life. And what I struggle with as a doctor is the guilt that not every single family, every single dad, every single mom, every single human being, every single aging parent doesn't have the right to better life. And instead, they're threatening things like $25,000 a month, highfalutin Cadillac facility memory care, or then we bleed out family cash and we go to $6,000 to $12,000 a month Medicare memory care, bankrupting all the premature heart attack and stroke we still have, women dying more of premature heart attack and stroke than men in this country, first sign of heart attack for 50% of heart disease for 50% of American women being a fatal heart attack. And this is all based in inflammation. And we were doing okay in life, kind of limping along as a family, a little depressed, a little tired. And then in 2013, we had the major floods in Boulder, Colorado, and we got 16 inches of rain in 1 week. So that's an annual rainfall for Boulder, Colorado in a week. And the valley is built kind of like a clay basin. It's one big pottery bowl. So the soil doesn't drain well. You get 16 inches of rain, all of a sudden every street turns into a river. I remember the college kids biking with their bikes. And then all of a sudden the clean river streets turned into poopy water streets because the water was coming up from the city sewer full of endotoxin. And patients who had gotten better with us, they were like from an F to a B minus, B plus, regressed dramatically. And then more importantly, patients who never got better with us, which was driving my brain and heart crazy because we put expectation to perform and graduate chronically ill in our clinic, they got worse. And I had a very eclectic phlebotomist, Cheryl, who always had a weekly idea for me, here's energy medicine and here's something on EMF. And she gave me Mold Warriors, Dr. Richie Shoemaker's first book on mold. And I just threw it in the back because it was another week of overwhelm. And I was like, mold, schmold, I live in a semi-arid desert, it's not a problem here. Then I pick up the book after this flood, and I read the first 2 chapters. I'm on my way home. I pull over this random Starbucks. I call my wife. I say, I'm going to be home late. I cannot stop thinking about these first 2 chapters. And I remember drinking a peppermint tea at this Starbucks, reading chapter 3 of Mold Warriors, which is where all the biochemistry is laid out. UBOs, unidentified bright objects, which you can see in MS patients, but they're not periventricular. Around the ventricles of your brain is where you see these white matter scars in MS patients. CIRS patients have them in higher amounts, just not in the same place the MS. So they can come in with those MS symptoms. And I read chapter 3, and I call Deb Wadener, Dr. Shoemaker's assistant of 41 years, the next day and sign up for the physician training program in fall of 2013. And the rest is kind of history as leveling up for another radically massive underlying cause of chronic mystery illness.
Yeah. And chronic mystery illness, you say that when the light bulb went off for me for integrative medicine, I just felt I'm sitting in front of patients and patients are telling me their symptoms and how poorly they feel. And I'm trying to throw prescription drugs at people. Nobody's getting better. And I'm looking in the mirror. The same thing's happening to me. And then to my oldest daughter. And I'm like you, I felt that guilt that, I'm not really helping anybody here. What is something different, that I can look at and do. And that's when I hit my track of looking at mystery illness. And why is it such a mystery? It's not a mystery. We know what is causing, things for people to be so ill, but why is it still considered a mystery?
Yeah, and that's the problem with healthcare, right? And I tell patients and public and doctors all the time, you got two problems in healthcare. 50% is a lack of a diagnosis. And a diagnosis in my clinic is not fibromyalgia. It's not SIBO. It's not adrenal fatigue. It is a 3 to 5 page exquisite layout of the details of why headache, of why skin rash, of why brain fog fatigue, right? And if you spend time, so when we're working with a patient, we're going to take in your list of symptoms, then we're going to create a differential diagnosis, which is a list of the potential underlying causes, plural of why, and then we're going to use validated labs and imaging, not fad labs, right? Urinary mycotoxin is a worthless test to diagnose CIRS. The only thing that test does is once in a while it says, maybe I should think about mold for someone, but healthy people have similar levels of urinary mycotoxins as a sick patient. You can argue it may be a normal detoxification experience to excrete urinary mycotoxins. It has nothing to do with diagnosing CIRS, and it pollutes healthcare and integrated medicine and functional medicine. And it really bums me out. So you use validated labs and imaging to say you is or you is not this. Right. And we're not mold happy, and we're not chronic inflammatory response syndrome happy. I've had patients who you think they're going to be CIRS and they're not. More often, we have people who CIRS is their Tom Cruise and Top Gun leaderboard diagnosis, but then they also have a pretty violent sleep apnea and they're choking out all night. And if you look at the symptoms of apnea compared to CIRS, there's like 50 to 90% overlap depending on the day. So the first thing we got to do is we got to get doctors to stop supplement selling and modality selling. And I hate to pick at everyone. And we have a huge nutraceutical dispenser. I'm not anti-supplement. I'm anti-trial and error supplements. Right. It's no different than trial and error pharma. And then you have the ND or the holistic MD or whoever picking on the pharma trial and error drug dealer, right? So you're no different. You just come with a little less side effects. You got to go back to that original naturopathic principle, identify and treat the underlying causes. And that's where the hard work is. But that's where the greatest reward is too. The original therapeutic order in naturopathic medicine was called remove obstacle to cure. You have to remove what's kicking that patient in the shins, or their body can't restore. You get those obstacles of cure out of the way. You get them some oxygen, for example. You get their blood sugar to stop going below 80. You get them out of a water damaged building and on some well-called cholestyramine to remove biotoxin, nature toxins to the toilet. You get a Lyme patient who was treated with antibiotics, but we forgot to give him well-called to mop up the BB-toxin 1, the Borrelia burgdorferi toxin 1, published in 1998 by Dunt et al. And you can actually turn off their immune system because the biotoxin stimulating trigger, or the lack of oxygen that's triggering cytokine storms, or the tooth abscess you missed that's driving cytokine storms, is finally getting addressed. So that's number one. And really quickly, so again, lack of a cohesive, thorough underlying cause diagnosis. That's we're not getting. Our patients are getting trial and error medicine on both sides of the aisle. The other thing we need is patient management. So who cares if I diagnosed you with CIRS if I don't organize your case right? And sorry to the guys out there, but as happenstances, trickle down effect, our clinic is surrounded by functional executing women. And these women are extraordinary, and our patients brag about our staff day in and day out. If you can't keep your brain dead, walk through the door, neurocompromised patient on track with, we're doing this lab, here's how we're going to get it over there, here's your follow-up appointment, here's the inspector we want you to use in your house, not joemold.com. Don't ozone bomb your house. You literally rupture spores into cell wall fragments, into dead crumbs, as Jenny Johnson says, which means more immunoreactivity, because you actually are more reactive to a ruptured cell wall if you draw a circle with dashes of a microbe than you are an intact. So if you don't do things right on cleanup, patient just got sicker. And you really need to manage their case. Another one is CPAP, right? If someone needs a CPAP, you have to hold their hand until they do not desaturate. Their oxygen doesn't drop down below 90. And the only way you're going to do it is if they have their own overnight oximeter ring. Right. So if you have a CPAP machine, that shows you mask leakage and it shows you how many times an hour you drop, but it doesn't show you how low you go. Right. So the sleep doc says, hey, 5 or less times an hour is healthy control. So if you have a apnea hypopnea index of 3.2 average, they're like, you're good. We put an overnight oximeter on you, and one of those three is 78%. That's like me putting on my jujitsu gi and throwing an Ezekiel choke on you in your bed. And then you're like, why am I grumpy and tired and agitated? Want to kick the dog?
5 times, but do you realize how far you desat?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then finally, for some humor but truth, you have to know how to explain why people want to use a CPAP, right? You'll tell that male that, apnea drives dementia. It's well published. Well, maybe there's things in my life I want to forget. Hey, apnea drives premature heart attack and stroke. Well, you got to go somehow.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, apnea drives insulin sensitivity and autoimmunity and interstitial cystitis, bladder irritation. Well, I pee a lot. Who cares? Hey,
about erectile dysfunction.
Well, then exactly, you got it. Yes, right? You say, hey, apnea crashes testosterone. It does. Hey, apnea breaks your private parts. What?
Thank you. That's
okay. Wait, what did you say about oxygen? How do I use that CPAP? I want to get with your staff and polish this, right? So CIRS of all the things is a little bit complicated for a clinic to diagnose because you have to get complement 4A and complement 3A from National Jewish without the preservative Futhan. People order that. We use LabCorp all day long, but they order C4A from LabCorp. That's not validated. You have to get it from National Jewish, right? You have to get alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone from LabCorp, right? Now we're getting Quest from TGF beta 1 from Quest because LabCorp changed their method. So it's not the way Dr. Shoemaker did the research. So doctors have to not bait and switch research for the convenience of their clinic. They have to imitate how the science was created and do it to the letter or bounce. Go sell real estate or teach skiing at Vail, whatever else you wanted to do with your life. But don't be a doctor if you're going to cherry pick science because it all rolls downhill to the patient's time, money, and energy. So again, patient lack of a diagnosis, patient management. We need to shift healthcare, not from what you have. Patient already knows my muscles hurt. You have fibromyalgia. Yeah, I know. I looked up algia means pain. Myofibrils mean muscle fibers. So I told you my muscles hurt, and you told me in Greek, your muscles hurt. Have a good day. Here's your pain med. Right? Why? And then the naturopaths are no worse. SIBO is not a diagnosis. Small intestinal bowel bacterial overgrowth. Why? Did you get a head injury? Do you have autoimmune attack on your stomach acid making cells so that you can't keep the pH of your stomach to prevent overgrowth? Are you hypothyroid and you just have a swamp gut where bugs start growing easily and so on and so forth? So not what you have, but why you have. And if we do that, we're going to keep having miracle stories of graduation out of roots and branches. Right. And I want every clinic to have that experience because that's what prevents burnout. More than anything is seeing somebody get their life back.
Absolutely.
Nothing is better than that.
And something to address, and we'll be coming up on a break here shortly. We've got about 4 minutes, but one thing that I think interferes as well it's not, talking about the obstacles of healthcare. It's not just from the healthcare side or the doctor side, the provider side, but it's from the patient side of patients who think, well, National Jewish isn't covered by my insurance, or these tests are not covered by my insurance, and factors like that. But people don't realize that sometimes you have to afford things. You have to spend money. And if healthcare, if doctors know the right places where you need to spend your money instead of a bunch of supplements that aren't going to work or a bunch of tests that aren't really validated, as you say, but you're going to have to spend some money. How do you handle that with people? I run into that all the time.
Yeah, we do a 10-minute free new patient consult. And in there, I cover financial transparency. And we also cover the integrity of our clinic. If insurance doesn't cover it, you pay the same price my wife does. Yeah. So another problem in holistic medicine is some clinics will upcharge data. And that's a total conflict of interest. And I was raised to be a goody two-shoe. My mom was this crazy saints, service-driven woman. But that's not why we don't upcharge labs. We don't do that because it pollutes your diagnostic consciousness. Now, subconsciously, somewhere in your brain, are you ordering that to make an extra $20 in your paycheck? Or are you ordering that to answer a yes, it is happening, or no, it is not happening? And you can go check. And that's as simple as, is your vitamin D low, to as simple as, do you have atrophy, shrinkage of your brain on brain MRI with NeuroQuant? And if we don't, if we don't get weird and greedy and keep that diagnostic process clean, I'm going to tell you what happens. Last week, we had 2 repeat brain MRI with NeuroQuant. NeuroQuant's a fancy, see even more clearly in the brain on volume of your brain size. And these 2 patients had 4 atrophic volumes. They had 4 regions of the brain that shrunk. And we have regrown their brain through the Shoemaker protocol. We have imitated what happened in the 2017 study. Vasoactive intestinal peptide safely restores multiple nuclear gray matter, right? Multiple regions of the brain. But they did the whole Shoemaker protocol to the letter. They didn't just give VIP. That's what a lot of holistic doctors do. They just jump in bed with the little flyer on the cheerleading pyramid before dealing with the husky, important base of the pyramid, which is remove patient from biotoxin exposure, deal with that building, right? So you have to do things right. So let's talk about money. So if we didn't fix those brains, that's $25,000 a month in memory care. Times 12 is $300K. Now, my father-in-law, bless his heart, but he's not going to take advice from me, and he's starting his 4th year in memory care. He's $26K a month. Fortunately, he finished relatively rich and he can afford dying with dignity, right? But we just crossed the threshold of $1 million in housing. It's not medical costs. It's housing costs. The sponge bath you, spoon feed you, right? That's before you talk about the patients we get off disability who now, spend about $5-10 grand on getting their case packaged up. The building's always a separate deal if you're CIRS. But now they can get the promotion. They can do their entrepreneurial jam on the side. They can sit and watch their kids' basketball game without freaking drooling with attention deficit, right? So it's extraordinary what you can do financially once you have your health back. And you can also blow $300K on ozone IVs and glutathione IVs and all this nonsense that doesn't aim targeted dollars to underlying cause. Now, again, I'm not like anti-IV. We don't do cancer, but we know what a good idea it is to do 37.5 grams if you're not G6P deficiency vitamin C for a cancer in some situations. But not at the risk of now I blew the patient's money for the validated labs and imaging I needed to diagnose the underlying causes. Then a freaking monkey could walk into the room and do the treatment plan because the underlying causes are so exquisitely laid out. So that's the goal.
Well, we are going to take a very short break. I hate to interrupt you. This is so stimulating. I love it. And we'll talk more about this when we come back on the other side.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is DeNovo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes DeNovo Plus B12 so successful? DeNovo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about DeNovo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Marianne Pinkston here at The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston, talking with Dr. Dorninger this morning about CIRS, our mystery biotoxin illness. And you're in Colorado, is that correct?
We are.
Yeah. And so I, want for everybody, we didn't get to tie up the first half as I usually do about how patients can find more information about you and about what your practice and what you do. Can you give us a little bit of background about where you are and how to find you?
Yeah, so we're in Louisville, Colorado. We built out a clinic with 5 providers and very functional staff at drdorninger.com, DRDORNINGER.com, Roots and Branches Integrative Healthcare. And that's where we do my major jam, which is graduating the chronically ill back to a creative, productive life. Instagram is at Dr. Eric Dorninger, and that's Eric with a C. And that's where we kind of do our public health announcements. Hey, did you see this paper that statin increases conversion of mild cognitive impairment to dementia in 65-year-olds, lipophilic statins, those kind of announcements, CIRS, all that stuff. And then on YouTube, the Vitality Hour is our podcast, and we're looking forward to having you on. And I want to see how much you're willing to share with the world, because I think doctors who understand healthcare misery are better at grinding out for their patients.
Absolutely. Got it.
And then finally, the CIRSX conference. So CIRSX.com is where you can access our conference, and that's going to be in Frisco, Texas, May 16th through the 19th. The actual conference is the 17th to the 19th. Some of the training courses are on the 16th. And if you register before March 15th, there's $100 off the conference. There's also a virtual option. And that I'm one of the co-founders, so that we can get building professionals and healthcare providers, coaches, and patients under one roof to create an A through Z model of graduation, which, as you self-disclose, has been your hardest issue, is how do I put this all together?
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. It is a very complicated topic. And like I say, even for providers, for physicians who are well-versed, I've talked to the best, I've listened to the best, I've read the best, and I still, I'm trying to put it all together. And so it is. And this sounds like a fantastic conference. You said it's up in Frisco, which is close to us here in South Texas. But if it's virtual, then anybody can access this. And you said patients and providers, correct?
Yeah, we have people streaming in from Finland and Australia and London. We love when patients come, because they always teach us this was the hardest part. And then we can grind out with them, how do we make it more time, money, and energy effective? Yes. And at the end of the day, it still costs money, but there's places where you can shave $500 here, $1,000 here, and then it's access for all. Not equal outcome, equal access is all I want. Everyone to have a chance at regaining their health. You still got to grind, but if you don't know, you don't know. And then we have people like PD Labs, who I know is one of your sponsors, and Ray Solano, who's an absolute juggernaut. Yeah. They're also going to be there sponsoring. Ray's going to give educational talk, so that'll be pretty awesome. So it's also integral sponsors whose services actually work for graduating them. And if your science doesn't make sense, you're not allowed to be at the conference. We are a show me the data crew, because the chronically ill are depending on us to protect every dollar, every ounce of energy, and every minute of time, because it's running out.
And you are so passionate. Thank you. I appreciate it. This is amazing. And you can find all of this information on finding him, plus the conference and the podcast here at drpbetterlife.com. That is where we have links to iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube are the top hits, but you can go to any podcast platform. Just look up The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston, and you will find us there. Got over 2 years now of shows. And do have Dr. Shoemaker and Dr. Heyman and other people who have been on as well. And so lots of information about chronic inflammatory response syndrome, Lyme mold, actinomyces, and many, many other features of it. And I'm so glad that you hit upon, the fact that there are other factors that play into this. It's not just a mystery illness, that, sleep apnea, hormones, adrenals, things like that are also very important. So I think patients tend to focus on one thing. It's my thyroid. I can't lose weight. It's my thyroid. I can't sleep. It's my adrenals. And there's so many more things. I tell patients that we are a 500-piece puzzle. Actually, we're more like a million-piece puzzle, but I make it simple in a 500-piece puzzle, and all 500 pieces matter. And so our bodies, when they're dysfunctional, all those 500 pieces play a huge role in that. And so go to drpbetterlife.com. You can find information there. You can also find information on Ray Solano and PD Labs up in Cedar Park, Texas, and all of our previous shows, as well as Magna Pharmaceuticals, who I treat a lot of patients for MTHFR and their methyl B and methylfolate, and they have a great product called De Novo. So magnaweb.com. So any final thoughts? We've got about 2 minutes. How can we tie up this complicated subject that you've now made a lot more easy?
Yeah, if you're seeking health for CIRS, you should ask a clinic, are you in strict accordance with the Shoemaker protocol? Strict accordance. It's fine to complement the protocol with integrative medicine. We do it all the time, but don't cherry pick the protocol. And is your clinic willing to get dirty with the buildings? When an average day for me is calling an inspector or a mediator who's in on one of my patients' houses on my way home, making sure they're not cutting a corner, accidentally messing up, creating training programs for remediation companies. And then finally, like you said, on the multifactorial, if you have a head injury and CIRS together, that's a danger zone. That's really where the suicidal ideations can be there, the depression can be there. And remember, it's 99% of the time biochemistry first. You are not lazy. You are not crazy. You're just not getting the dive deep underlying causes healthcare you need. It's very rare for us, short of a stage 4 glio brain cancer, to not see really cool things happen to people and their health and restoration once you get those underlying causes out of the way.
Absolutely. Do you recommend people start with the VCS test, the visual contrast test?
I do. I'm going to post today on the gram just to talk about screening, but it's visual contrast sensitivity testing on surviving mold only. We don't get royalties there, but survivingmold.com is where you get your VCS. It's $10. CIRSX is where you can get a lot of your education. And then you'll ask yourself 37 symptoms when you do your VCS. And if you have a whole bunch of those, it is highly likely we're picking up CIRS. Go see a doctor who's Shoemaker certified. Those are available on survivingmold.com that can then validate, yes, confirm this is CIRS, and then get cooking.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for having been so flexible about coming on. And I hope to have you on again. We will talk more about this. And again, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Everybody have a great week out there.